Episode 5 of Mammals is called Heat, and this episode, as you'd imagine, is about animals that live in the hottest places of the world. So it's basically the antithesis of last week. So since last week I wore a dressing gown for the review, I thought this week I would shake things up with some shades. So this episode opens up in Namibia, where we just get an overview of various mammal species at a big watering hole. You get elephants, zebra, gazelle, they're all oryx, they're all there. And it's just basically showing you that animals can endure where things are hot and the water's not very easily available. It's just an alright way of introducing the episode. So the first major bit of footage we get is the capuchin monkeys in Brazil. We basically see these bearded capuchins just roaming around looking for water. Some water has collected in the trees themselves, so they use their tails to get into them and to basically soak up the water like a sponge and then just drink from their tails. And it's quite cool. Again, it's I wouldn't say it's overly exciting, but it's an alright sequence, and I didn't know that behaviour happened, so that was pretty cool. Then we get camels. So we see camels in Australia. For some reason, I found it a bit weird seeing them there. I knew that they lived in Australia. I've actually seen them in Australia on other programmes, so I don't know why I found it weird here. I can't think of any other series where we've seen an extended footage of dromedary or Arabian camels, as they're called here. Usually it's Bactrian camels we get a lot of. The whole thing where they had this like flap of skin that came out their mouths that could basically inflate. That was something I didn't really know about, so I feel like we all know about the camel's hump and everything, how it retains water. So I'm glad they kind of highlighted something else that they do. Then we get the shifakas. So the shifaka sequence I'd heard about, I'd seen it in the trailer. It's basically these shifakas. They're living in the dry forests in Madagascar, and it gets pretty hot, so they've got to go and try and find a way to cool down. So they do that by hugging trees, basically. But it was quite interesting that they would do that. Even more interesting when some of them would actually go into the trees because it's even colder there. That was cool. I mean, they're essentially just finding shade, but it was a relatively recently discovered behaviour, so, that's always good to feature. Then we get the echidnas. I would say the echidnas are the first part of the episode where I thought this is really good. But I think the echidnas were great, because echidnas you don't see very often at all. I think the last time we properly saw echidnas was in The Life of Mammals, again, 2002, so quite a while ago. Basically, they blow snot bubbles to kind of moisten their nose, so it's easier for them to smell. That was really cool. I didn't know anything about that. And then when you get all the males following the females through the bush, that was really fun as well. It's kind of a funny sequence. And then you see them hiding from the bushfires. They do talk about the bushfires quite a lot, because I mean, we kind of forget that happened. I feel like that got lost in translation with the COVID. We see, and you also see that some of the echidnas, their spines get melted off. Like that's not great. I thought the echidnas were good. It was just fun to see them. I thought that was quite good. Then we had the Harris's antelope squirrel. Don't know why it's called that, but it's like they just did those password things where you can like randomly select 3 words. I feel like a secure password anyway. But you see it flattening itself out on the ground to basically drop heat. That was really cool. I'd heard of that. But I hadn't really seen it before, so I thought that was really cool. I think also it was a good comparison with the squirrel and the rattlesnake, because we all know that reptiles are the animals that first conquered the sort of deserts and the drier parts of the world. So to see how the snake was kind of bested by the squirrel, it kind of did a lot to highlight the adaptability of mammals for these environments, how they are actually in some ways more adapted to the desert environment than these reptiles were. I thought that was a good sequence, and that kind of was highlighted again later on with the baboons and the crocodiles. But no, that was a pretty good sequence as well. That was another bit where I thought, yeah, that's really interesting. The giraffe sequence was really good as well. So the giraffe sequence, I was a little bit... I can't say I was looking forward to it as much, purely because it looked like they were just going to see them fighting. And we've seen that before in Africa, and the sequence in Africa with the 2 giraffe males fighting, I don't think that's ever going to be topped. However, I like how they did actually tie it in with the fact that this is about conserving heat and dealing with the heat, because these blows, when these giraffes are smacking each other, they do tend to lose a lot of heat. It shows you how the patterns of their skin are adapted to conserve heat. And they use thermal imaging. Again, thermal imaging used here quite well in this episode. Shows you when they do smack at each other, it's a massive hot patch, like it's almost like burning compared to the rest of their body. I like how they didn't just focus on them fighting. It was very much about conserving heat during the fight, which to me was more interesting. I think that was the better way to go. Then we get vampire bats. So the vampire bats was probably one of the more forgettable sequences. It was basically just vampire bats going out, bite a chicken, drain the blood. We've seen it before in various programs, not necessarily just BBC ones. But it was alright. I mean, it's still cool thermal imaging, was used to a great effect here, and I still enjoyed it. Then we had the baboons. So the baboons were basically getting crocodile eggs. So Nile crocodiles come out, lay their eggs in the sand, obviously. They've got to lay them where it's kind of hot. So the baboons are basically hanging around waiting for the crocodiles to leave so they can get the eggs. However, they did make a good job of showing you how the baboons are just going to every length not to exert themselves at all. And again, it did another, like I said with the squirrels and the rattlesnakes, it did a good job of showing you how mammals in some ways are able to best the reptiles in these hot environments. Like the crocodile had to go back to the water to cool down, whereas the baboons could just sit in the shade. And even when the crocodile left, they still didn't go and dig up the eggs because that would mean more time in the sun. They let the monitor lizards do it and then got in and stole all the eggs. That was really good. I thought that was a really good sequence. I didn't expect much from that. I kind of thought, all right, okay, we'll see baboons collecting eggs. That'll be fine. No, I really liked it. It was probably up there for one of the highlights for me, to be honest. It was a really good sequence. And the last kind of major bit is the jackals. So jackals, another animal we see a lot. They kind of always feature in the background, but they're never really in the forefront. And I think we just see this jackal around this waterhole trying to catch stuff. I think what I really liked in that was showing you the scale between the jackal and the hyena. The hyena looked enormous compared to the jackal. I mean, I think because you've spent so much time with the jackal, you forget how small it is. Because especially in the shots when it's just by itself, it could, by all intents and purposes, be as big as a wolf or a coyote. Obviously, it's much smaller than that. But when you compare it to the hyena looked really intimidating. I think that was a really, really good way of filming that. Finally, we get the diaries. So the diary sequence was pretty good. It was about the people getting the shafakas. It was them just wandering around trying to find them. It was, it was good. But I don't think it was as good as, say, the Wolverines last week. I don't think that's going to be topped, to be honest. The bit when they talked about how these protected areas are being felled by local farmers just because of all these droughts, their crops are failing, so they're having to turn to other ways to make money. So that was interesting. This episode was good. I think it was probably the weakest one of the series so far. There was nothing in it as exciting as, say, the humpback whales and the orcas, or the polar bears last week, or the hyenas and the buffalo in the first episode. But it was still good. The highlights for me, I think the echidnas, the baboons, the jackals at the end I actually quite liked. The giraffes. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in here I liked, but there certainly weren't as many things that were as exciting as what we've seen in previous episodes of this series. What did you think of this episode? What were your highlights? As ever, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Next week, I will be doing the forest episode, which is the last one. So it's another series done and dusted. And yeah, I'll see you then, and goodbye.